better serving God each day. At this time, we'll have the daily study.
Good morning again. And so this morning I thought, wow, there's so many things that's happening today. We have celebration, Christmas celebration, we have the Sabbath celebration, and we have the communion celebration. And so I think we should take advantage of this opportunity because it's once in a lifetime that God lavish us with so much blessing today. You have to pray for me because in standing here, I'm not there. I'd rather sit down. So I'm not that type of person. But we want to look at our lesson that we have studied for this quarter. And so we are at the end of our lesson, Deuteronomy. 13 lessons. And this is our last Sabbath of the year. And we thank God for His keeping and His provision that He had made for us. And so our topic for this week was the resurrection of Moses. And we know how important resurrection is as Seventh-day Adventist believers. If there were not a resurrection, Christ's resurrection, then of course our hope would be lost. So we are thankful for a resurrection. That's okay. So I'm going to start with the memory verse, and that's taken from Jude 9. It says, "Yet Michael the archangel, in contending with the devil, when he disputed about the body of Moses, dare not bring against him a reviling accusation, but said, 'The Lord rebuke you.'" So we will get into that a little bit later, but we see that Satan was claiming ownership of Moses even in death. The last part of Sabbath, it says, "As Moses' life and ministry reveal much about the character of God, so too does his death and resurrection." Isn't that compared with the life of Jesus Christ? Right? So we see Jesus' life and his death and resurrection. And of course, we're looking for his return. Sunday. And we can jump in at any time, and if there are questions or suggestions or anything, we can discuss that. The sin of Moses, part 1. I'll read the first paragraph, and it says, "Time and again, even amid their apostasy and wilderness wanderings, God miraculously provided for the children of Israel. That is, however, undeserving they were, and often remain that way. God's grace flowed out to them. We too today are recipients of his grace. However, much we are undeserving of it as well. After all, it's without the grace if we deserve it. Would it? So what's the difference between the children of Israel and we today in terms of our behavior, our response to God? God has been always faithful to us. And when we look at the last year or so, matter of fact, this year, we're at the last week of this year, and God has provided for us may not be all the things that we want, but he has provided our needs. And so at times we then look at the things that we wish we had, as opposed to the things that he has done for us. And we murmur, we complain. And so what this lesson is doing is encouraging us and teaching us that we should depend on God, and the things that he has done for Moses, he will do for us too. Okay, let's look at the middle part where it says read, Numbers 20, 1 through 13. The question asks, what happened here, and how do we understand the Lord's punishment for Moses because of what he had done? I'm sure we know the story, but we're going to read that. Okay. Oh, I thought you was going to. You were good. Mm-hmm.
Righteous indignation. The question that I can answer is, what is this?
Mm-hmm.
Because based on what Moses did, we understand that he defied God, right?
Yes.
When he was angry, because I think he saw like ungratefulness based on the question you asked us, right?
Yes.
He saw the ungratefulness of his people. Because when you ask him, why didn't he was in Egypt? Why would you want to be in slavery and stay in slavery, you know?
Yes.
So I said sometimes we get angry. And this is the question. Is there something as righteous indignation? Can we be really angry and not be sinful?
Is there anyone that has an answer to that?
When Jesus went into the temple,
Yes.
and the people were buying and selling,
Yes.
and it bothered him, so he overturned their, whatever.
Yes, the tables and such.
I'm sure he was indignant.
Yes, he was.
Well, I don't think it's up to us to take off our revenge on people for what they have done to us. Now, I think God has the ultimate authority if he wants to, when he wants to be angry,
yes,
and deal with people accordingly. But
yes,
if we notice here, when the people were rebelling, it was God that actually delivered them from Egypt, really. But Moses was feeling the blunt of it because he was the one on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So when they were rebelling against Moses, they were actually rebelling against God.
Correct.
But here we see that Moses got real angry with the people and did what he had to do. The first thing, he struck the rock, right? And yet still, God did not deal with him very kindly about that. So although he had, I could understand as a man, he had every reason to be real frustrated and angry.
Yes.
And so he did what he did. Yet still, God did not deal with him very kindly. And so God was still extending grace and mercy. And I'm sure God understood what he was going through, right?
Yes.
Because God himself was being rebelled against. But yet still he showed his grace and love and mercy to the people. And well, of course, he did show some grace to Moses as well, because Moses did not really forfeit the eternal promise. But God is a great God, is a wonderful God, and this is a good message for us, because it doesn't matter what we do, doesn't matter how we rebel or whatever we do, God is still gracious to us, and we got to be grateful for the grace of God. I thank God for his grace.
Thank you. And the soul that sin shall die. So God has extended great mercy to Moses.
And so there's two things that came from here also. It says there's a consequence to every action.
Yes.
Right? We pay a price irrespective. But the second part, it says, God means what he says, and he says what he means.
Yes.
And there's no nuances, there's no little gap inside here.
Yes.
So we need to go by his word.
Yes.
And this was Moses' case where speak, and Moses struck
yes,
instead of speak.
Yes. Now, there are situations where you can be angry at what someone does. and not the individual of such. So if you have a child or a friend and they did something and you may say, why did you do that? And your anger is focusing on the things that they did, but not on the person per se. So you can be angry and, of course, not direct, because then you can move away and still have a conversation with the person, still feel comfortable to communicate with the person, and not having anger in your heart. Brother Orbe? Oh, I thought you were saying something.
There's a quotation that says, you can disagree, but you don't have to be disagreeable.
Disagreeable, correct. All right? And so there are ways, and it stems from the heart. It stemmed from the heart. So we look at Cain and Abel of why he did what he did. And the Bible says that it was evil in Cain's heart. And see, God knows our heart. And there are things that we may have been struggling with. That is something that we cherish. And God knows that it's a struggle and He's working with us. So there's a difference than enjoying evil as opposed to having a struggle. All right, so we're going to look at Numbers 21 through 13. Question asks, what happened here, and how do we understand the Lord's punishment for Moses because of what he had done? I know we have talked about it a little bit, but we're going to do some. My reader here is going to help me, and you can read like the first 5 verses.
Okay. Numbers 20. Then came the children of Israel, even the whole congregation, into the desert of Zin in the first month. And the people abode in Kadesh. And Miriam died there, and was buried there. And there was no water for the congregation, and they gathered themselves together against Moses and against Aaron. And the people chode with Moses, and spake, saying, Would God that we had died when our brethren died before the Lord. And why have you brought up the congregation of the Lord into this wilderness, that we and our cattle should die there? 5. And wherefore have you made us to come up out of Egypt, to bring us in unto this evil place? It is no place of seed, or of figs, or of vines, or of pomegranates, neither is there any water to drink.
Okay. So we have the jet of it. So if we were to go back when they were slaves in Egypt and what God has done for them, liberate them, take them out of slavery up to a point where now they don't have water. So they have seen so many evidence of God's power, and now they're complaining about water. And so the question is, we'd like to personalize what we're doing. How do we deal with stress, disappointment? How do we deal with simply you're getting dressed to go somewhere and it starts raining? Simple things, but it becomes such a nuisance to us. And here it is, Moses, who, after we're going to be looking at the story, and we may criticize Moses for what he did. But then if we put ourselves in the position of leadership, and that's one of the importance of this lesson, is the importance of leadership. So when we acquire that position, much is given, much is required. So that there are things that are expected of a leader as opposed to a follower. There are responsibilities. And so we see here the children of Israel was looking to Moses and Aaron for a solution. Of course, God is the one who Moses ought to be looking to get direction to carry out for the children of Israel, which they did not. I'm going to read a little a paragraph where it talks about Moses' rebel, and it's on Sunday. It says, however, look at Moses' words as he struck the rock, even twice. Hear now, you rebels. I mean, that seemed to be a very bad word. I know we have spoken other words, right? And so, must we bring water? The question is, must we bring water for you out of this rock? Numbers 20:10. One can all but hear the anger in his voice, for he being by calling them rebels. So, as you were saying, Brother Francis, if they were loving Moses' art at the time, he wouldn't have used those choice words, and sometimes that's how we express ourselves, because there's anger. Good. Sister.
Sometimes